The city skyline shimmered beneath the weight of nightfall, its endless sea of lights flickering like stars trapped beneath glass. Somewhere high above the noise and chaos, atop a private rooftop lounge cloaked in exclusivity, Damian Wolfe sat alone, a crystal tumbler of scotch in hand, the amber liquid catching the moonlight like fire. A self-made billionaire, Damian was as much myth as man. A reclusive architectural genius, known as much for his visionary buildings as for his cold, impenetrable demeanor. Emotion had no place in his world. He built towers, not relationships. He shaped cities, not connections. And yet tonight, something felt off. The familiar burn of whiskey did little to silence the quiet restlessness gnawing at the edge of his composure. There was a weight in his chest, a sense of suffocation he couldn't explain, as if the air around him had thickened, as if something unknown were drawing him toward change. He hadn't come here looking for anything, and certainly not for someone, and yet, there she was. She stepped into the room like she didn't belong there, a subtle grace in her stride, unsure but determined. Her name, he would learn later, was Sofia Lane. But in that moment, she was simply a ripple in the stillness, a burst of quiet beauty in a world too polished, too calculated. Her chestnut hair spilled in soft waves down her back, her long fingers tucking one rebellious strand behind her ear as her wide, expressive eyes scanned the space. Sofia wasn't wearing designer labels or flashing expensive jewelry. She didn't need to. There was something strikingly untouched about her, untainted by greed, unaffected by pretense. She looked like a sketch come to life, raw and imperfect in the most captivating way. Damian's gaze locked on her like a hawk spotting prey. Except this wasn't about conquest. It was instinct. Pull. She didn't know who he was. That much was clear, and that only intrigued him more. Their eyes met. The moment stretched. The noise around them faded. Something had shifted. A line had been crossed, quietly, irrevocably, and neither of them knew just how much their worlds were about to change. Sofia slid onto a bar stool near the far end of the room, her fingers nervously adjusting the strap of her simple black dress as she tried to steady her breath. She hadn't planned to end up here, not really. The rooftop lounge, the skyline, the soft jazz murmuring through hidden speakers. It all felt too luxurious, too distant from the cramped studio apartment she called home. But sometimes when life wore too thin, you needed somewhere to disappear. Somewhere no one knew your name. She didn't notice Damian approaching, not until his presence settled beside her like a shadow. Vast, controlled, undeniably male. He didn't sit, not yet, just stood, close enough to command attention without needing to speak. "You don't look like the kind of woman who drinks alone in a place like this," he said, his voice low and smooth, with a timbre that slid along her spine like velvet over steel. Sofia turned slowly, eyes meeting his, and for a second she forgot how to breathe. The man towering beside her was devastating, chiseled jawline dusted with stubble, sharp, unreadable blue eyes. There was elegance in his posture, but danger in the way he watched her, as if dissecting her, seeing more than he should. "You don't look like the kind of man who talks to strangers," she replied, her voice soft but steady. A quiet strength. Something flickered in Damian's expression. Amusement. Approval. Maybe tonight's the exception. He finally slid onto the stool next to her, his frame lean but commanding. He motioned to the bartender without looking. "What are you drinking?" Sofia hesitated. "Just, a cocktail." "Let me guess," he said, leaning in slightly. "You don't do this often." She gave a faint smile, eyes dropping to her hands, fidgeting with the hem of her dress. "Is it that obvious?" Damian tilted his head, studying her. "It's not a bad thing, but it makes me wonder, what brought you here tonight?" Silence stretched between them for a beat too long. Then, "Sometimes," Sofia said quietly, "you just need to be somewhere else, even if it's only for a night." He nodded as if he understood more than he let on. For a man who didn't believe in distractions, he found himself utterly distracted by her. They spoke for what felt like minutes, or maybe hours, about nothing, about everything. Books, art, music, cities, loss, laughter. Damian didn't know how or why, but each word out of her mouth chipped away at something hardened inside him. She wasn't pretending. She didn't perform. She didn't care who he was. And that, more than anything, captivated him. The way she smiled when she spoke about her illustrations, the way her voice softened when she mentioned her mother, the way her eyes lit up when she described her favorite kind of rain. He had known many women, too many, but none like Sofia Lane. And for the first time in years, Damian Wolfe wanted more than just a conversation. He wanted her story, her truth, her surrender. He leaned closer, his breath ghosting the shell of her ear. "Come with me." Sofia froze. Not because of fear, not because she didn't understand what Damian was asking, but because she did. His words weren't crude. There was no pressure in his tone. And yet beneath the softness, there was a gravity to them, a promise, a pull. Her heart pounded in her chest, loud and erratic. This wasn't like her. She didn't follow strangers into the night, no matter how magnetic their presence or how achingly lonely she sometimes felt. But with him, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt inevitable. She looked up at him. His face, only inches from hers, was unreadable, controlled. But his eyes, those cold, commanding eyes, burned with a hunger that made her skin tingle. He wasn't playing a game. This man never played. When he wanted something, he took it. And right now he wanted her. Just one night. That's what he'd said. But Sofia knew deep down that if she said yes, it wouldn't be just a night. Nothing about him suggested temporary. Still, her lips parted. And without a word, she nodded. Damian's response was instant and deliberate. He rose smoothly from the bar stool and extended his hand to her. Sofia hesitated only a second before slipping her fingers into his. His palm was warm, his grip strong, like stone and silk at once. The drive to his penthouse was nearly silent, but the tension between them roared louder than the engine. Damian sat beside her in the back seat of his sleek black car, his long fingers occasionally flexing against his thigh, as though barely holding back from touching her. Sofia sat rigid, heart fluttering wildly, her breath catching every time their knees brushed. She should say something. Ask him about his life. Ask herself why she agreed. But words had no place here. Not with the way he kept glancing at her, not with the storm already building between them. When they arrived, the elevator swept them to the top floor with quiet efficiency. The doors opened to reveal a space of impossible beauty, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, sleek, dark furnishings, curated artwork, and sharp masculine lines everywhere she looked. His home was like him, modern, powerful, and undeniably intense. The moment the door closed behind them, Damian turned to her. No more space, no more silence. He stepped toward her, slowly, deliberately, until her back was against the cool glass wall, and his hands were on her waist, grounding her, claiming her. "You have no idea," he whispered, his breath warm against her temple, "what you're doing to me right now." Sofia trembled beneath his touch. Her hands found his chest, feeling the strength beneath his shirt, the steady rhythm of a man who seemed to control everything, except whatever this was between them. He leaned in, his nose brushing hers, his lips hovering. "Tell me you want this," he murmured. Her pulse thundered. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than breath. "I do." That was all he needed. Damian's mouth crashed onto hers with a force that stole the air from her lungs. There was nothing tentative about the way he kissed. He devoured her, like a man starved. His hands slid up her sides, molding her body to his, as if trying to memorize every curve through sheer contact. Clothes vanished in a trail of urgency. She barely knew how they made it to his bedroom, only that the moment her back hit the mattress, everything around her disappeared. But then, just as things threatened to spiral out of her control, Sofia stilled. Her hands pressed gently against his chest. Her breath trembled, and she whispered, "Damian, I've never..." He paused. His weight shifted, eyes narrowing. Understanding dawned, sharp and immediate. "You're a virgin." Sofia nodded, cheeks flushing crimson. She braced for rejection, for mockery, for disappointment. But none came. Instead, Damian's expression darkened into something dangerous, protective, reverent. His fingers cupped her face, his thumb tracing her lips like they were sacred. "You should have told me," he said hoarsely. "I thought it wouldn't matter. It matters more than you know." And in that moment, something shifted. The predator in him softened. The possessiveness deepened. He wasn't going to take her. He was going to worship her. Damian didn't speak for a long moment. He simply looked at her. Not with lust, not with pity, but with something far more primal. Reverence. Possession. That dangerous tenderness that only existed when a man like him felt something he didn't know how to name. "You don't just give something like this away," he murmured, his voice thick, almost broken. "Especially not to a man like me." Sofia's breath caught. "Then maybe I'm not giving it away. Maybe I'm choosing." Her words settled between them like a vow. Something unspoken cracked in Damian's chest. Something ancient and cold. And as he leaned in again, there was no longer hunger in his touch. There was purpose. He kissed her slowly this time, deeply. His lips moved over hers like a man memorizing the feel of something sacred. His hands caressed instead of claimed, his fingertips tracing the contours of her body with maddening control. It was worship disguised as foreplay, reverence wrapped in fire. He took his time. Every kiss down her neck, every stroke along her thigh, was a silent promise. "You are mine, and I will never forget this night." Sofia had never been touched like this, as if her body was made of glass and gold, as if she were art, a miracle. She'd always imagined her first time would be awkward, uncertain, but with Damian, there was only surrender and the shocking realization that she didn't want to protect herself anymore. When he finally entered her, it wasn't rough or rushed. It was slow, deep, intimate in a way that stole her breath and left her trembling beneath him. She gasped softly, her fingers digging into his back, eyes wide with the weight of sensation she had never known. Damian stilled immediately, brushing her hair from her face, reading her expression like a blueprint. "Look at me," he whispered. She did. "I'll never hurt you." And then he moved, gently at first, letting her adjust, letting her feel him. And as the pain faded, it was replaced by something else, something overwhelming, a pleasure so sharp, so full, it made her eyes sting with tears. Her body welcomed him. Her heart betrayed her. She was falling. And Damian Wolfe, the man who built skyscrapers from shadows and steel, was the one who was taking her there. The room blurred around them. Time became meaningless. The only things that existed were the sound of his breath, the rasp of his voice whispering her name, and the way he held her like he never planned to let go. He didn't treat her like a conquest. He treated her like a promise. When he finally reached his peak, it was with a raw groan pressed into her neck, his arms tightening around her, as if afraid she might disappear the second he let go. He collapsed beside her, breathless, his chest rising and falling like a storm barely calmed. For several long moments, neither of them moved. Then Damian reached for her, gently pulling her into his arms, her back to his chest. His chin rested on her shoulder, and he pressed a soft, reverent kiss to the curve of her neck. "You've ruined me," he said quietly. Sofia blinked. "What?" His grip tightened, possessive. "I've never felt like this. Never wanted more. But now I don't think I'll ever be able to sleep without you beside me." The words sank into her skin like ink, permanent and terrifyingly beautiful. Her heart pounded. This was supposed to be one night, a brief, beautiful escape. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Damian Wolfe didn't do temporary, and as she lay in his arms, listening to the quiet rhythm of his breath against her shoulder, Sofia realized something terrifying. She didn't want temporary either. The morning sunlight crept gently into the room, painting soft golden streaks across the silk sheets. High above the waking city, in the penthouse that hovered somewhere between heaven and isolation, Sofia Lane stirred. Her body ached, delicious and unfamiliar. Her skin still carried the phantom imprint of him. Every kiss, every whisper, every fevered promise from the night before. She blinked slowly, as if unsure whether she had dreamed it all. But then she felt it. The warmth behind her, the weight of his arm draped across her waist, the sound of his breathing, deep and steady. Damian Wolfe. It all came back like a wave crashing into her chest. Sofia turned slightly, careful not to wake him, but his grip instinctively tightened, like a man afraid of losing something the second he let go. "You're not leaving," he said, voice low and rough from sleep. She froze. "I wasn't." "You were," he cut in gently but firmly. "But I don't want you to." Sofia sat up slowly, pulling the sheet over her bare chest. "Damian, I need to..." "Stay," he interrupted, his eyes meeting hers with unflinching intensity. "At least for breakfast. For a few more hours. For whatever this is." She smiled faintly, but it faded as the silence between them thickened. Reality was already starting to seep through the edges of her escape. "I can't stay in this fantasy forever," she said softly. "My real life is waiting." Damian leaned against the headboard, watching her carefully. "Then tell me what your real life looks like." Sofia hesitated, then exhaled. "It's messy. I work 2 jobs, freelance illustration and part-time at a bookstore. Neither pays enough. Rent's overdue. I skip meals sometimes just to keep the lights on. Last night, I just wanted to forget for a while." A muscle in Damian's jaw clenched. He said nothing for a moment. Then, "You won't worry about any of that again?" She blinked. "What?" "I'll take care of it. All of it." His tone left no room for doubt. "You'll never stress about bills, late rent, or clients who ghost you. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine." The words hit her like both a lifeline and a chain. She shook her head slowly. "Damian, I can't let you do that." "Why not?" "Because I need to know I can survive without being someone's responsibility." He stared at her, confused, frustrated, possessive. "I don't want you to survive," he said quietly. "I want you to live." "And I want to live on my terms," she countered, her voice steady. For a moment, there was only silence between them. The tension wasn't anger. It was a tug-of-war between love and control, between wanting to hold and needing to breathe. Sofia leaned in, her hand brushing his. "I care about you, Damian," she whispered, "but I can't lose myself inside someone else's world, even if it's yours." His eyes darkened, not with rage, but something deeper. The terrifying realization that maybe, just maybe, love wasn't about control. Damian stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. The city spread out beneath him like a kingdom he ruled. And yet none of it mattered. Only she did. He hadn't slept since she left. Her voice still echoed in his mind. Her scent still clung to his sheets. And the way she looked when she walked away, like he was a chapter she didn't want to read again, had carved something dark and furious into his chest. So he did what he knew best. He took control. Run a full background check on her, he ordered his assistant that morning, not bothering to sit. Sofia Lane. I want everything. Where she lives, where she works, who she owes, what she eats for breakfast. I don't care how small. Yes, Mr. Wolfe. He didn't wait for the report. He didn't need to. One call later, a sleek black car was waiting in front of her building, engine purring like a predator in the early light. Sofia had just stepped outside, still trying to shake off the dreamlike haze of the night before, when the vehicle pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. "Miss Lane?" the driver asked, polite but firm. "Mr. Wolfe sent me. He'd like to see you. Now." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "I didn't agree to—" It wasn't a request. The door opened, and despite the alarm bells screaming inside her head, she got in. The elevator doors parted onto the top floor of Wolfe Industries, and there he was, Damian Wolfe, in a tailored black suit, sleeves rolled, no tie, jaw locked, as if he'd been pacing, waiting, burning. When he saw her, he didn't speak. He moved. In seconds, he was in front of her. Then his hands were on her waist, pulling her into him so tightly she gasped. His grip was unrelenting, possessive, not gentle, claiming. "You didn't call," he said darkly. "You didn't answer. Damian, do you have any idea what that did to me?" His voice was low, raw, vibrating with fury barely held in check. "You think you can give yourself to me and then walk away like it meant nothing?" Her breath caught. "I never said—" "You don't have to say it," he growled. "Your silence was loud enough." He cupped her face in both hands, tilting her chin up until her eyes met his. "Say it," he whispered. "Right now." Sofia swallowed hard, her pulse racing. "Say what?" "You're mine." Her hands pressed lightly against his chest. "Damian, this is too much." "I said," he cut her off, voice almost a snarl now. "Say it." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "This isn't— I didn't expect—" "Damn it, Sofia." His forehead dropped to hers, his breath ragged. "You are mine. Body, mind, soul. You know it. Now say it." Tears burned behind her eyes. Not of fear, but from the sheer force of him, the intensity, the obsession, and the worst part, she felt it too. Her voice trembled as it left her lips. "I'm yours." Damian exhaled like a man finally given oxygen. He pulled her into him, crushing her against his chest, lips finding hers in a bruising, desperate kiss. As if claiming wasn't enough, he had to devour. The days blurred into nights. The world outside faded into irrelevance. In Damian's arms, time lost all meaning. Again and again, he pulled her into his world, into his bed, into his fire, until Sofia could no longer tell where his hunger ended and hers began. Their bodies collided like waves against rocks, crashing with force, then retreating into softness, only to return with greater urgency. Each night was a new surrender, each morning a quiet ache she didn't want to heal from. And Damian, he was insatiable. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered demand only fed the storm brewing inside him. He didn't just want her, he needed to claim her again and again, as if trying to stamp out any doubt of who she belonged to. And slowly, Sofia stopped resisting, because the truth was terrifying in its simplicity. She wanted to be his. It was just after midnight when she found herself lying beneath him again, her fingers tangled in his hair, her breath catching in her throat as he whispered her name like a confession. He looked down at her, eyes dark, body still trembling from the aftermath of their latest storm, and said almost too quietly, "Move in with me." Sofia blinked, her body still warm from his touch. "What?" He didn't repeat it. He didn't need to. The weight of his words settled heavily between them. "Live here," he said, voice deeper now. "In this bed, in this life, with me." She swallowed hard. Her instinct screamed for caution, But her heart was already leaning toward him. "Damian," she whispered, "we barely know each other." "That doesn't matter," he snapped gently. "What we feel, this, doesn't follow rules or timelines. I want you here, with me, every night, every morning. I want to wake up and know you're mine." His words were dangerous. Too much. Too fast. But so was the way he touched her, the way he looked at her, like she was the center of every building he had ever dreamed of, the foundation of something permanent. "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm scared." He cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing her lips. "I'll protect you from everything, Sofia. Even from yourself if I have to." She stared at him for a long moment, and in that moment, she stopped running. "I want to belong to you," she whispered. Damian's breath left his lungs like a broken prayer. "You already do." Then he kissed her again, not like a man claiming victory, but like a man who had finally come home. The rain tapped gently against the windows of the penthouse. Soft, steady, constant. The city below blurred into shadows and light. But up here, everything was quiet. Damian stood in the center of his bedroom, shirt undone, bare feet on cold marble, watching Sofia as she moved through his space like she'd always belonged there. She wasn't dressed up, no makeup, hair messy, one of his shirts draped over her frame, and he'd never seen anything more beautiful. For a man who thrived on control, precision, and calculated design, Sofia was the only chaos he'd ever wanted to keep. She turned to him and smiled, and he couldn't hold it in any longer. "I don't want to keep you like a possession anymore. I want to wake up next to you, not just tonight, but for the rest of my life," he said, his voice rough with vulnerability. She blinked, surprised by the intensity in his tone. "Damian," he stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. "I know I'm obsessive. I know I cross lines. And I know I've asked for more than you probably ever intended to give me." He paused, breath unsteady. "But I've never wanted anything, anyone, the way I want you." Sofia's throat tightened. "What are you saying?" He reached into his back pocket. No box, no diamonds, just a simple ring. Gold, understated, real. "I'm not asking for perfection. I'm not asking for you to change. From the first night on that rooftop, I knew something had shifted. I didn't want just one night. I wanted always. Stay with me. Marry me." Sofia stared at him. It wasn't the grand proposal she might have imagined. No candles, no crowd, no script. But this was Damian Wolfe. This was raw, unfiltered, terrifyingly honest. She felt tears pressed behind her eyes, not from pressure, not from fear, but from the depth of what he was offering. A man who had spent his life building walls was handing her the key. She stepped closer, rested her hand over his. "Yes," she whispered. And in that moment, something shifted, not just in him, but in her too. Because love, real, consuming, imperfect love, wasn't about possession or control. It was about choosing each other again and again, forever. The ring had barely settled on Sofia's finger before Damian pulled her into his arms and kissed her, like a man who had just claimed the only thing he'd ever truly wanted. That night, they didn't celebrate with champagne or candlelight. They celebrated in silence, in the soft way he touched her, in the fierce way he held her, in the reverent way he whispered, "Mine," over and over again against her skin, as if saying it enough times would make the fear of losing her vanish. And she let him, because now she wasn't afraid either. Months passed, not in chaos, but in quiet transformation. They married in a private ceremony, no crowd, no press, just her, him, in vows whispered beneath a canopy of winter sky. Damian wore black, Sofia wore ivory, and when he looked at her walking down the aisle, his breath actually caught. She had never seen him look that undone, and he had never seen her look more certain. After that, everything changed, and somehow nothing did. Nothing. Damian was still Damian, ruthless in business, obsessive in love, demanding in everything. But now, there was softness beneath the steel. Not weakness, just love. He didn't stop being possessive, but now he asked instead of commanded. He listened instead of assumed. And on the night Sofia cried, sometimes from hormones, sometimes from the terrifying beauty of what was growing inside her, he would hold her so tight it felt like the whole world had gone quiet just for them. Sofia was 5 months pregnant when she first felt the baby kick. She had been curled on their oversized couch, sketchbook resting on her round belly, pencil loose in her fingers. Damian walked in from a meeting, already pulling off his tie when he saw her freeze. "What is it?" he asked, instantly alert. She grabbed his hand and placed it on the swell of her stomach. Then, a gentle nudge, and another. He stared. "Is that—" "Yes," she whispered, smiling through sudden tears. "That's her." He knelt in front of her, both hands now cradling the curve of her body, his forehead pressed against the cotton of her shirt like he was praying. Sofia had seen him angry, powerful, obsessive, passionate, but never like this, never humbled. From that moment on, he couldn't keep his hands off her, not out of desire but devotion. Every night he would talk to their daughter, read to her, kiss her goodnight through Sofia's skin, as if he was already trying to prove something. Not to Sofia, not even to the baby, but to himself, that he could be more, that he was more, because of them. But still, there were moments when his darkness peeked through, when he'd tighten his grip on her hand a little too hard in a crowded room, when he'd snap at anyone who so much as glanced at her too long, when he'd panic if she didn't answer his call within seconds. The old Damian still lived inside him, but now so did something else. Love. Real. Rooted. Relentless. And Sofia saw it all. She didn't try to change him. She didn't need to. Because for every flaw, there was also this man who pressed his lips to her belly each morning, who picked out names with unbearable seriousness, who traced her stretch marks like they were sacred. He wasn't perfect. He was hers, and she was his. Not because he took her, but because she chose to stay. One evening, as the sky bled into soft violet, they sat on the terrace of their home overlooking the city. Sofia leaned back in a cushioned chair, one hand resting on her stomach, the other holding Damian's. Her hair danced in the breeze. He was beside her, unusually quiet. She turned to him. "What are you thinking?" He didn't answer at first. Then, eyes locked on hers, voice low and steady, he said, "You changed everything." She smiled. "You let me in." He leaned closer, brushing his lips across her knuckles. "I never believed in forever," he murmured. "Not until you." Tears welled in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from the gravity of his words. Because she knew how hard it was for him to say them, how much he'd had to tear down inside himself to mean them. And then, softly, finally, "You gave me a reason," he whispered, brushing her stomach with his fingers, "to believe in forever and to become someone worthy of it."